then. I'm going to announce that this is the City of Lamarque City Council workshop of July the 13th via Zoom, beginning at 6 p.m. For the purpose of considering the posted and following agenda. Madam Clerk, I'll call the meeting to order if you'll call the roll, please, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell.
Here.
Councilmember District B, Lane.
Present.
Councilmember District C, Mitchich.
Here.
Councilmember Woman, District D, McAuliffe.
Here.
And Mayor. Everybody's here.
I'm here. Item 3, actually, we do ask God's blessing on our meeting and our country. Item 4, citizens' participation, comments from the public. At this time, any person with city-related business who has signed up to speak to council on a specific agenda item, limited to 3 minutes. In compliance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone?
There were a few, but I think they were from Grant Works, and they really didn't need to say anything unless you just want to call on them. There's a Kelly Odom and a Charlene. It's also with Grant Works, but I mean,
I'm good if there's no citizens comment.
no.
We'll move on to item 5, the consent agenda. Mr. Jackson.
Mayor, Council, good evening. First item on the agenda tonight is 5A, discussion related to adopting resolution R-2020-0009, repealing resolution number R-2020-0004, and moving the Lamarque general election previously called for Saturday, May 2nd, 2020 to November 3rd, 2020, as allowed by proclamation of the state of Texas governor issued by proclamation on March 18th, 2020. And I'll let Robin talk to you about this one.
That one, well, 2 months ago, we actually decided or moved it to the November election, but it has to be done formally, so by resolution. So according to the
Anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, moving on, item 5B, discussion relating to entering into a contract with the Galveston County Clerk and Galveston County Election Officer for the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, and possible runoff election to be held on December 15th, 2020. Pretty standard. We do this every year. Robin, anything to add?
I do not.
Okay, any questions on that one?
Yeah, Tink. Just quick question. How flexible is this contract if by chance there is an opportunity for us to consider vote by mail? Are we flexible enough with this contract where we could adjust if we needed to?
Robin, you want to answer that?
All counties as well as all the entities have to go by what the election code says as far as mail ballots go. That hasn't changed. So Galveston County is still going to follow what the election code requires. I mean, because they have to. We have to. If something changes, of course, they're gonna. I'm sure they'll have entities that will take advantage of that.
Okay, so I think what he's asking though is if there is a change, does the contract allow us to implement that change with the Galveston County officer?
I think there's a little bit of leeway as far as the contract goes, but I mean, I'm not sure what he's asking. I mean, if we're not going to contract with the county, there's not a whole lot of time for us to do it anywhere else.
No, ma'am. What I'm asking you is if by chance there is a change that allows us, because of this COVID-19 virus, that allows us to vote by mail, those that would otherwise not have that ability. Is this contract flexible enough for us to then, if this council so chooses to adopt, for us to then implement vote by mail according to this COVID-19 crisis?
I don't believe it's been written into the contract. No, I don't. I mean, looking at the contract, I don't think that it has.
Robin,
Mr.
this
Chair,
is,
if I
this
could-
is Councilman Mitchell. I read in there where it has for the mail-in ballot, it has the charges. There's additional charges for it. It's $3, and depending on if it required some other ID on there, then it's like $3.50 a ballot. But yes, it's in there.
May cost us more, a little bit more. Okay.
Tink, would you ask, and you don't have to do it obviously today, but would you get that clarified for us so that we can kind of get a better understanding of what that possibly would look like?
I definitely will. What I might suggest is that we do have a provision in this where we can cancel this up to the 31st of this month without incurring any expenses. So we would be okay to go ahead and approve this tonight. Ask the question. That way we don't have to call you guys back, because this does have to be. We got to get this to them pretty quick.
Yeah.
So we can ask the question, and then if they say that there's an issue, then we can call a special meeting and address it in a special meeting.
Yeah, I agree, because I agree, Tink, because I believe if we're at the point where we are having to allow for that opportunity, that $3 that I saw in that contract will be null and void, because we would have a tremendous amount of interest in that. And I believe that at that point, we might be able to get some assistance from the state or federal government. So I just wanted to make sure, if COVID causes us to have to consider this, that we can move in the direction to keep our citizens safe. So get back to us whenever you can, but I'm ready to vote on it tonight.
I will follow up on that in the morning.
I can do that.
And Mayor, let's see, am I unmuted? If you want to, in the motion, whoever actually makes the motion, you could motion to approve it subject to approval by the city attorney. And I will work with Mr. Jackson. We'll make sure that there's a good termination or amendment clause in there in the event that the law is changed on allowing vote by mail.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Feel free to interject at that time and on the other issues that we discussed via email earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, when we get in the general meeting, we'll make sure we bring that up so we don't forget to adopt it that way. Okay, any other questions on item 5B?
No, sir.
Item 5C, discussion relating to approving the observed city calendar for the city holidays for calendar year 2021. We talked about this last year. I'm sure you guys remember this because I added in a holiday last year. And so I brought it to city council, and I told you it's always been standard practice. I've always thought that this is a schedule that should be approved by the council every year, especially since it's different than what's actually in the employee handbook right now, because the addition from last year brought it back again this year. But I'm asking that we change the holiday schedule for 2021 and add in another city holiday that would be Juneteenth. So that's the schedule that's before you. That would leave us with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 recognized city holidays, which is pretty standard practice, between 12 and 14. So it would include Veterans Day again. Would leave that in there, and it would add in Juneteenth. Unfortunately, Juneteenth is on a Saturday, so we would take it the day before, on Friday.
Love it. Thank you.
Any questions on item 5C? Okay, carrying on, item 5D, discussion related to adopting resolution number R-2020-0010, designating GrantWorks Inc. as the administration service provider for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant MIT Program Mitigation Program application and project implementation administered through the Texas General Land Office. And I'll have Charlene talk about this one, and we'll answer any questions you have on it. Charlene, you want to jump in on this one?
Sure. So the city put out an RFP and RFQ for a grant administrator and for an engineering service for the CDBG MIT funding opportunity. At this point, there are no funds committed to it. We did select from the proposals received on the grant administrator side, we received 5, and we selected what we believe to be the best fit for the city at this time. And they can prepare infrastructure project proposals for those grant funding opportunities.
So just a little bit more additional information with that one, because it was a new funding cycle. We had to go out for RFQ again. You know, most of these, it's a recurring thing with them. They make you go out every time. And you have to select a grant administrator and a grant, and then your engineering services for this one. This once this grant mitigation grant rolls forward, there's some huge opportunities under this grant for the city of Lamarque. It looks like we're going to be pretty high on the eligibility list for one. 2, there is a lot of money in this thing. And so I think we have opportunity to really take a big step forward as a city under this grant, as long as we get it done right. There were, I think Charlene said there were 5 different proposals that we received for the grant administrator. The one that we have selected is GrantWorks. The one that had the highest score was GrantWorks. I've worked with GrantWorks before. They do a really, really good job. They're all across Texas. And they do a really good job on their stuff. So if you have any other questions,
I have a question for Ms. Warren.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it cooler there in Colorado? Your background.
Oh, that's Northern Lights. Wishful thinking.
Yeah. I'm done.
Okay, we did include in your packet a copy of GrantWorks application, so you could go through and look at all the stuff on their proposal. Any questions on item 5D?
Yeah, I have one question. I'm fully on board for hiring GrantWorks. From everything in the packet, it looks like a good fit. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about those GLO opportunities. My question is about sort of to be in the same spirit as like the resolution that we passed last month, where we said we want to continually make sure that as a city, we're working with contractors and companies that are also committed to having equity in their infrastructure and pursuing racial equity, just equity on all platforms. I wondered if there was a way for us to build into the rubric that you guys use for grading folks who apply who respond to the RFPs and the RFQs. Is that something that, can there be just like a minimum sort of standard of something that we grade? Like, does this contractor have a strategic plan and within it a commitment towards, pursuing diversity and equity within their company, inclusivity clauses, things like that. Obviously we can't measure a company's like greater pursuit of equity on a like check and balance scale. But if there were a few things that we were able to like just yes or no questions, I understand that maybe the forms we're using can't be edited because maybe they are prescribed forms, they're HUD forms. I don't know. Just something I'm interested in making sure that those we work with as a city share those same equity-centered values.
So I do believe, and plus I think GrantWorks and probably Robert can answer this question too. I do believe the forms that we use to score the grants are forms that are provided to us by GLO and by HUD. But there may be a little bit of wiggle room at the bottom of that form for us to put some local stuff in there. And I'm going to see if, I know we have the ladies from GrantWorks on there. Maybe one of them can answer that question.
Ms.
Ladies from
Panacci, do you have any
GrantWorks.
comment, or Ms. Odom?
Charlene, are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't know if you can change it. That's something we'll look at, but I can assure you that GrantWorks is absolutely a company that believes in diversity. And if you looked at the people who work for us, you would see that.
Right, and it's this, my concern is certainly not about the contractors on the table. It's just about building a pathway for our city going forward, so that a way for us to ensure that whenever we look for contractors for every element, whether it's for landscape management or grants or whatever, that what we're doing is trying to align with companies that not only tick all the other boxes, but also this one as
I
well.
think that's a good idea, and I think it's something we'll put in our proposal, so you would all know that. When you look at the proposal, you will know that that is something that we strive for. I have no problem with that.
And Charlene, am I correct in saying that we're mandated in order to contact at least 2 minority-owned contractors during the bidding process?
as well.
That's correct. That is correct.
There's also, sorry.
Go ahead, Dara.
Also within the city's purchasing and procurement policy, you have the historically underutilized businesses, which are women and minority-owned businesses, and you have a policy built into all procurement. And I understand that that's not necessarily the same as companies that value diversity, but it's also a way that the city's making sure that all procurements give everyone a chance, to the extent that we can reach out to those businesses that might not typically be well known in a field.
And that's something as we move forward, that all when you're doing your meetings, that there will be documents that state that the companies that we go out for proposals that's one of the things that has to be done. So yeah. Kelly, anything else? Kelly, I just do want to tell you that Kelly Odom will be your application writer. Kelly has decades with GLO and has been with GrantWorks for about 10 years. So very, very knowledgeable. You also are going to have Lenore Hellman as her assistant, and Sylvia Davila, who lives in Galveston, will be your client service representative. So you've got people around you who are close that will be able to respond quickly. And we're looking forward to working with you.
Councilwoman McCall, just add one more thought in there with what you're saying. I mean, on this one in particular, as we talked about, it's a federal grant and they have a federal form. They tell you they're going to submit, you fill out this RFQ, you're going to get this, use this form to evaluate them, use this form to email them back. But they're very standardized as most federal government stuff is. But to your point, we do a lot of other RFQs, at time to time through the city that don't have those, and we definitely need to be looking at that stuff in our RFQ process. When we do RFQs for mowing, for all that other stuff, that's definitely a place where we need to look at adding that stuff in and making sure that we're meeting it there, because we come up with the criteria for those RFQs and we come up for the score sheets for those. So we'll definitely keep that in mind as we move forward. Any other questions on? Okay. Any other questions on 5D? Item 5E, discussion relating to adopting resolution number R-2020-0011, designating Attico LLC and L&V LLC as engineering service providers for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant -MIT CDBG-MIT program applications and project implementation administered through the Texas General Land Office, GLO. And I'll let Charlene start on this one too.
Okay, on this proposal, or this request for qualifications, we sent out for an engineering service or an engineering provider that would assist GrantWorks in developing projects for our city based on the funding opportunities through the mitigation grants. You can select more than one engineering service for this assistance, and the city is recommending L&V and Attico engineering firms.
Okay, so a little bit more information on that one before we open that up for questions. If you remember last year when we did the 2 grants that we submitted for last year, which was infrastructure and buyout and acquisition, we completed both of those. We did get funded for infrastructure, and that's the Mary and Melody project, which is in progress right now. The second application that we had under buyout and acquisition was the one where we were going to try to build the new retention pond. So we could get flood flows out of towns quicker and try to alleviate a bunch of our other flooding issues around town. When we went to GLO with that project, they absolutely loved it. They wanted to support it, but they said that based on the very narrow scope that HUD had provided for that, they didn't think they could get it through the next level. So they ended up telling us to bring that project back, and they told us to bring it back under this program. because they said it fits absolutely into this program. Based on what we've heard, we know there's going to be multiple rounds of funding for this. So that project in itself, that project was ready to go. It's just going to be redoing the application basically on it. It was ready to go. So what we're looking at is either having two separate projects. That's why we picked two separate engineering firms, because the ADICO had already completed the work on the other one. So I'm just bringing them back in to get that one shaped up a little bit and put in. And then looking at a second one, which will be water and wastewater, to deal with a lot of our infrastructure, try to deal with a lot of our infrastructure needs of water and wastewater around the city, and maybe even lumping those two together. And I'll let maybe Robert talk to this a little bit more. I know that we have these projects. I think these grants minimum is $3 million, maximum
Minimum 3 million.
Yeah, maximum.
It's 100 million, but if you go over 50 million, you have to change your plan. So it's best to stick in the 3 to $50 million range.
So you think about $50 million and what we could do around town with our infrastructure. That's a lot of work. So I'll let Robert talk about this.
So the initial plan is, and it might be tying, and I have to get with GrantWorks, that drainage project. I don't know what size it is, but we might be able to tie that together with maybe I&I infiltration and inflow into the sanitary sewer lines and create that as one project, try to get that into a larger project. But you can submit up to 3 projects. The drainage infrastructure, the detention pond, we might be able to combine that into one project. 2 of the other projects they were looking at is, I know we're looking at going after bonds in order to increase the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. But instead of having to use city bond money, one of the applications that we can submit potentially would be the expansion using the GLO mitigation money in order to pay for the construction of the wastewater treatment plant. Another project that the city had in their sights was renovate or rehabbing all of the city lift stations. And if we went ahead and put together an application that included the lift stations and adding generators at all of those lift stations as a mitigation item, I think that's another project that we can address with this GLO mitigation money that the city had originally intended to use some of your own funds in order to do that. So I think, this can be a game changer as far as money coming into the city and, designing some improvements that are going to benefit the city for the next, 30 to 50 years. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we're looking forward to working with the city, GrantWorks.
Could I jump in here real quick? You are able to put in 3 applications, but I want you to understand the way these applications are going to be gone through once they go to the GLO. Let's say that you all are eligible for Harvey HUD mitigation, which you are. There's $500 million in that. Let's say 200 applications come in for that. And they're going to take the first application from each applicant. They're going to go through those 200. If there's any money left, they'll go to your second application and then go from there, and then your third application. And you can see where $500 million can get eaten up real quick. Yes. So a round becomes that much more difficult. So it's going to be really important that you get as much as you want to get in that first application and not depend upon a second or a third round. The other thing that you have is you are also eligible under 2015 HUD mitigation. There's very little money in that. There's only 23.7 million, I believe, but you are eligible, and you could submit a smaller project for that one in hopes, and then that one doesn't count against the Harvey HUD one that you're getting. I just want you to be aware of the way they're going to go through those applications. They aren't going to take your city and look at all 3 at the same time. They're going to go through 200 plus applications, and then they're going to come back.
So Charlene, I guess it's best to say that we're going to work together. If we're selected, we're going to work together. We're going to come up with what we think are the best options for the city and prioritize them, and then
Right.
and present them and say, hey, we think this is the best way to submit the different applications and under what funding cycles, whether it's the 2015 flood or the Harvey, what's
Absolutely.
the best options so that we can score higher.
Yeah, so we'll put together as big a projects as we can that we think are suitable. We think we think we can get through, and then we'll come back and sit down with council, of course, when we get to that point and get approval of all those projects before they move forward. But we're gonna try to get a big project put in on this because we have a really good opportunity here to have a huge project out of this.
Correct.
Compared to what we've been getting, we have a chance for a really big grant out of this grant. So we're going to go after every bit we can get. Any other questions on item 5E? Okay, item 5F, discussion relating to ratifying the round 2 emergency business retention program expenditures. Alex, all yours.
Good evening. Round 2 went very well. Mayor Pro Tem Bell, Gene Smith, and Deanie Barrett sat as a review committee. They were able to meet the day after it closed, and they awarded 61 grants in the amount of $426,500. Finance did a wonderful job again, as they did in round 1, and were able to distribute those checks quickly. And so it was only a matter of a week or two before everybody was paid. We did have one late applicant. When I say late, that's the wrong word. We had one applicant that followed up on her application, but she had a typo when she originally turned in the application. She put EDG instead of EDC. She was able to show that to us, and so we worked with the EDC chairman and the committee to make sure that we took care of that person, because she was absolutely able to show that she was well within the deadline of meeting that. And so that's why that number shows differently from what you see in your packet, from 60 to 61 businesses represented. But all in all, round 1 and 2, we were able to distribute $974,000. I have not seen anywhere a city of our size and even significantly larger that have done more for our businesses than the city of Lamar.
If I could
Questions for Alex on?
If I could comment, please, I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Bell for serving on that committee and being our appointee as well, and actually coming up with the idea for the second round. I mean, the letters and thank you cards have been coming in quite profoundly about people saying that it helped them to the point of not having to close, including a couple of larger restaurants. So everybody that was involved, thank you so much. I want to make sure that gets in the minutes in case this is not pulled from the consent. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to say thank you as well to the council and to the committee. Most of you know that I've been in this community a small business owner since 2006. And so I know what it means to have a small business and to try to make ends meet for your family, as well as understanding what this pandemic has done to my family's business. And so I felt like the right thing for us to do as a city is to give our small businesses as much support as we can. And Alex is right. No city that we know of, especially our size, has done more for their small businesses. And I want to thank from the bottom of my heart Chairman Crowder, the EDC board, which Mayor Hocking is a member, Alex Getty, who's worked with us with patience and enthusiasm, Ms. Barrett and Mr. Smith, who served on that committee with me. Everybody that I encountered when I began to ask for this second round has been nothing but encouraging and excited to do what we can do for our citizenry. So again, thank you, Mayor, for your compliments. Thank you, Mr. Getty. Please thank Mr. Crowder, Ms. Barrett, Mr. Smith, and even Mr. McGaffey for their work.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on item 5F? Seeing none, item 5E, discussion related to authorizing the purchase of one case 521G front end wheel loader through HGAC buy in the amount of $138,478.58. This is an item that was in our list of things that we were going to do last year in our contract with the citizens. Mr. Carey, anything else that you want to add into that?
Hey, thanks, Mr. Jackson. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Yeah, exactly right, Mr. Jackson. This equipment was approved during the 2020 budgets, and we held off as long as we could because of the pandemic to make this purchase. But yeah, our current front end loader is, it's in pretty bad shape. So this is definitely needed, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Item number 5H, discussion related to authorizing the purchase of one 2021 Ford F-550 regular cab with VersaLift body 5G through HGAC by vendor in the amount of $102,887. Again, another item on the contract with the citizens that we approved in the budget last year. Now that we have the bond funding, that's why we're moving forward with these. Mr. Carey, anything else to add on that one?
No, sir, Mr. Jackson. That's it.
Any questions on that one? Item number 5I, discussion relating to authorizing Attico LLC engineering proposal for the Westwood subdivision drainage improvements in the amount of $18,100 and encumber funds for the additional construction of $66,900 for construction for a total project cost estimate of $85,000. This again is another item off of the contract with the citizens from last year. We had the two projects. We moved Mary and Melody off into the grant and worked the grant on that. And then this was the one that we funded out, or we approved to fund out of reserves. Mr. Carey, anything else on that one?
Yes, sir, Mr. Jackson. This, like you said, Mary and Melody is, one of the worst areas when it comes to drainage, and Westwood subdivision is, pretty close to it. This subdivision has experienced drainage issues for decades. With any amount of rain, it floods. So yeah, this is definitely needed, and the citizens appreciate it.
Any questions or comments on that one? Seeing none, moving on. Item number 6A, discussion relating to adopting ordinance number O-2020-009, amending Article 3 speed regulations of the Marque Code of Ordinances, Section 62-88. Reducing the speed limit on the northbound main lanes and southbound main lanes of I-45 of Interstate Highway 45 from 65 miles an hour to 55 miles an hour, and reducing the speed limit on the northbound frontage road and southbound frontage road from 50 miles an hour to 45 miles per hour until the completion of the freeway expansion project by Texas Department of Transportation. Pretty self-explanatory. Chief, anything else you want to add in there?
Just that if you would recall, back in June of 2019 was when they requested us, or it's when council passed the first half of it, of the freeway expansion, speed limit reduction. And I don't know if you recall back then, I mean, they're asking us to pass the ordinance, but at the end of the day, it's their freeway and they'll do it. So this is just enact the city ordinance reducing the speed limit. And that's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. They can do it by order of the Highway Commission, but they always come to the cities and ask for the cities to do it to show cooperation. And it gives our citizens a chance to know that it's coming because we're more in touch with our citizens than they are on the transportation board. Any questions or comments about that one? Okay, item number 6B, discussion relating to CARES Act interlocal agreement request by the County of Galveston. In your packet, you have a copy of an interlocal agreement that was submitted to us by Galveston County. Basically, what this interlocal agreement requests is that, as we discussed at the last meeting or the meeting before, I guess it was, as part of the CARES Act, excuse me, because our county population is below 500,000, as the money for COVID-related expenses was dispersed, counties that were 500,000 or more, the counties basically got the county government got all the money, and they got to decide basically how that money was to be distributed or if it was going to be distributed. In counties under 500,000, the cities got the money directly, and the county got their apportionment of that money just strictly related to the number of residents that they had in the unincorporated areas. So with our population being what it is, we received a direct notification from the state of what our funding was. We were funded, everybody statewide was funded at $55 per capita. So our total amount was a little over $900,000. The county basically sent this out And what they're asking for in this is that we give up 18% of our funding to them for continuing to pay for testing. It's a pretty short agreement, but basically that's what they're requesting, is that we give up 18% of our funding to them right now so that they can continue to do their testing program. I like it. I agree that we need to try to help where we can. We have obviously seen a lot of expenses on our local budget that were not anticipated because of COVID as well. We paid for testing for our nursing home. We paid for testing for our staff. We've been purchasing stuff like masks and safety equipment for our firefighters and our police officers. We've had to do work on buildings. We've had to pay for overtime, and we've had a bunch of different expenses that we've taken already under that are eligible for reimbursement under this grant. In the last few weeks, we've seen the numbers go significantly higher. We don't know what the trend's going to be for the next 6 months, 5 months until this grant funding runs out. Right now, the grant funding has a deadline of December 30th. That's an end date. Wouldn't be the first time federal government came back and extended it and said, we'll stretch your money out a little bit longer. So we don't know for sure that December 30th will be a final end date. We don't know what our expenses actually would be. My recommendation on this would be that we go back to the county and tell the county that we will be more than happy to let them recover whatever we don't use at the end of this cycle. If we have 40% of our money left over, they can have the 40%. If we have 5%, they get the 5%. But I think we need to meet our local needs first. And our citizens pay a lot in county taxes too. And there's a lot of money sitting in reserves at the county level. And I think that they have plenty of money to survive where we don't have the same kind of reserves they have sitting around. So questions or comments on the agreement?
Team, this is Mitch Ditch. Based on what we've spent so far, you think we're okay on our overtime and everything?
No, I think we're going to see a lot more in overtime. I mean, we just now started to have issues with employees where we're having to take care of some time with employees and some other stuff. We're paying for a lot more testing now for employees even alone than what we were. I don't know. It would be almost impossible for me to rub a crystal ball right now and say what percentage we would have left over. As we, and it's not just, I don't know that it's just necessarily from, we're seeing a lot of other issues, I think, that are coming up right now that I think we can attribute to COVID. And this is one of the things I told some of the other city managers when we talked about this. You look at the increase in crime right now. I mean, that's a national thing. I mean, it's not just here in the Marque, it's everywhere where police departments are strapped right now. This can, if we can tie that directly to our overtime directly to something related to COVID, then it's reimbursable. And so, we've gone back and we've looked through our numbers back at when we first got the funding to see what was eligible for reimbursement. And we had a pretty big chunk already that's eligible for reimbursement. I think just in overtime alone at Fire and PD, and in the first month and a half of this, we had over $100,000 in eligible reimbursement for overtime and other expenses in those departments. And we've still got at least 5, 6, 7 months to go. So that could eat that up pretty quickly. And right now the other thing is the governor put some limitations on that money that was not put on by the federal government. And that was basically that 75% of your funding could be used for COVID medical type expenses, and the other 25 could be used for equipment and for other stuff. So we've used some money for equipment so people could work from home, so other things could be done to try to reduce the spread. That's all recoverable. The partitions that we had to put up in buildings, the purchase of the software, the purchase of this Zoom software, that's recoverable. The purchase of all the software and the programming that we did for the virtual court, that's recoverable. All those things were done in response to the virus, and they were not things that we had in the budget. So anything that we could show that was in response to providing services that were not anticipated, but were incurred because of COVID, that's all reimbursable. So I don't know that we will. I don't know what we'll have left over, if we'll have any left over. If it gets up to 750 cases a day, who knows? It may be even worse. And then there's also potential. We do know that there's part of that money there's potential for reimbursement for business grants out of part of that too. So, we may be looking at the end of this, we may have enough, depending on where it's at and how those numbers get shifted around, we may be able to reimburse ourselves, reimburse EDC for part of the money that was given out to the businesses. And so I don't know what the final I know that a number of the big city governors or big city mayors have sent a letter to the governor this week asking that those restrictions on the 75-25 be lifted because it was an arbitrary thing that he put on the money. It wasn't at the federal level. So they've asked for that to be lifted. So there's a chance that it does get lifted and some more of it could go into other things that can, can go back and forth between equipment and other stuff as well too. So we still don't, we're going to have to cover our expenses one way or another. And that coverage could mean the difference. Having that money could mean the difference between spending reserve money that we have held back for a hurricane, or we have held back or that we have available at the end of the year to pay for a piece of equipment or pay for something else versus paying for testing or equipment or stuff that we need right now. So I don't think anybody, I know I wouldn't be comfortable with saying that based on what we spent at this point, we definitely would have money left over at the end. I don't think Susie would be comfortable with saying that either.
If we know how many we're testing and we have a cost on that, and that is what the county is looking to recover, why don't we be specific on what we'll, kick back to them on that? I hate to just say 18% or 40% or whatever, because those are some monies that we should be taking advantage of right here first.
Right, and I don't know. I mean, there's been no program by the county done here in the city. And I think this is part of my issue with this, primarily to start with. When we started having the problems in the nursing homes, the county went to League City, they went to Texas City, they did all those nursing homes. But when our nursing home called and asked if the health district would come and do testing there, they were told no. So our nursing home didn't get it at the same time everybody else did it, and ultimately we ended up paying for the testing in our nursing home because the county never did schedule them to have it done. But we got a directive from the state that basically said our fire department was responsible for it. So we ended up doing the testing there. All the testing clinics that we've had in town have all been ones that Charlene set up that were through the state. I mean, there's not been a county testing site set up here in town either. We do have citizens going to the health district and getting tested. I understand that. But if you have a citizen that's been in Lamarque for 50 years and they've never utilized the health district and they're going to the health district now to get a COVID test, I think they paid their dues already. I don't think they need to be, we need to be keeping track of we paid $100 per test for people in Lamarque when I don't know that we're getting the same benefits that everybody else getting out of the health district to begin with. So I mean, and I know some other cities have kind of broached it the same way with, there's no way we want to give up 18%, but if they'll tell us how many tests we've done, we'll pay them for the test. I mean, we could potentially look at some kind of a reimbursement on tests that have been given, I guess. I mean, I don't know, we've had some people that have tested that had insurance. If they recover, I don't know if the health district takes insurance or not, but at first, if they recovered from insurance, it shouldn't have been counted against us anyway. I don't know if there's any way to ever figure out those numbers.
Well, I'm not opposed to helping them, but I think they need to, rather than just throwing a number at us, they need to give some justification. And the reason I say that is just because of what you've just said about we're not seeing the help from the county. Where's the help from the roads that we've been committed for so many times? I mean, the county seems to be asking, but they've made commitments to us and have not followed through. So,
yeah, Tink, if I may, I have two questions. So,
okay.
First, broad strokes of the little bit over 900K that we received for the city of Lamarque. About how much percentage-wise of that do you think that we have currently spent that will be reimbursed? Would you say it's a third, 50%?
I'm going to say maybe we're about 25% at this point. If I had to guess, I would guess 25% right now.
Okay. Okay. And then, so second question, I know we've spoken this and you alluded to this earlier, but there is funding that the county you feel should be utilizing before they start imposing on the individual municipalities. Could you talk about that money just for a brief moment?
Well, I mean, everybody's in an unknown situation with this right now. The county has a tremendous amount of money in reserves, and governments aren't supposed to be for profit. So it would seem to me that the best way to do this would be to utilize what's in reserves. If they don't have enough money available, if they don't have enough money budgeted, we didn't have enough money budgeted to cover expenses that hit us related to COVID. They didn't have enough budgeted to hit, to cover expenses that were related to COVID. But they have a mechanism to cover it right now that came from all the citizens of the county. I mean, it's not, it's all money that's already there. The taxes that we paid last year, the year before. I mean, that money is sitting there that they could use. And I understand that they use that to invest and pay for projects, and that's all fine and dandy, but we're in a pandemic right now. And so we got to deal with the pandemic. And I don't think the best way to deal with the pandemic is to just come, they didn't call us and say, hey, we may run out of money for testing. Let's get some ideas together. They called and said, we're going to send you this ILA and we want 18% of your money. That's the only way we're going to do it. There was no cooperation, no coordination, no anything. It was just, here you go. Take it to your council, sign it. And basically it was like, here you go, get it signed as soon as you can. And it's like, well, we've got to take this to council. And I don't know if council's going to want to do this anyway. So don't hold your breath. I think they can cover the cost and make sure any citizen that wants to get tested can get tested. They have the funds to do that. And then at the end of this is after we all figure out, and there could potentially be another funding cycle. They're talking about another set of stimulus money right now. There could potentially be another funding cycle. It might change my opinion on this. We might get another lump of money and be like, okay, well, yeah, we probably do have enough to go ahead and help out, but let's talk about actual costs and not theoretical. I'm not paying for testing in League City. Our citizens shouldn't pay for testing in League City. They shouldn't pay for testing in Texas City, and they shouldn't be paying for we shouldn't be paying for testing that's done everywhere else. We should be taking care of our own.
Yeah, I agree with what Robert said, which is, I agree that municipalities should work collaboratively to make sure that we're covering as many people across the county as possible. But also does seem, I agree with what you're saying. It seems prudent that before we've even, we are just at the cusp of this new dramatic increase, that the idea of giving away nearly 20% of our allotted funding is kind of scary. Particularly if there also hasn't been any, I don't feel so much of it as like a tit for tat situation where it's like, you guys didn't set up in here, so we're not going to pay you. But there is something to be said for, like, have they made any plans for any testing within our city? And I think I'm in agreement that I want us to hold on to this a little bit longer, and that maybe it would make sense for us to give money, but maybe a little more data is required.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Tank. This money that we have is for COVID-related purposes. Earlier, we had a discussion about a possible opportunity for vote by mail. Even at the rate that has been published in the contract, if half of our citizens, we're roughly a 20,000 city population, if half of our citizens decided to vote by mail, 10,000, that would still only be $30,000. And so perhaps that might be a COVID-related expense. But what I wanted to get down to the deeper part of the conversation. One of the only things that the county, and I respect Judge Henry, I respect the Commissioner's Court. I know that they are at this point in time doing what they believe is in the best interest of the citizens. But one of the only things that county government is responsible for is the health district, and the Galveston County Health District was created and designed so that perhaps the citizens of that county would be protected from all sorts of health catastrophes and crises that might threaten that county's population. So the health district is here for this specific purpose. In case there is an outbreak of some sort of virus or disease or plague or illness, this is one of the only things that they do. And so I'm curious as to why they would want to transfer that solemn responsibility to municipalities that have all sorts of other things that we need to be doing with our resources. When they fix roads, they do some other things, and they control the health district. So I'm not sure if we should be doing this. But I did have a question for you, Tink. It sounds like you said that 1.3 million of their funding was committed to expand public testing. What is the other million? Did they indicate to you what the other $1 million was designated for?
They already
No,
spent it, right? Isn't that what they say in this report?
And I'm trying to find real quick the original. Yeah, it says in the interlocal agreement that the Galveston County received 2.4 million. That was what they got for the county. And of course, their statement that they're making with this is that 2.4 million was to cover testing on the people that live in the unincorporated area because the city's got money for the people inside the cities. But yes, in that resolution, they only have 1 point in their budget plan. They only have 1.3 million of the money that they got listed in there as that as well in there for that. So you're correct on that. So there's 1.1 million of what they received that is not listed there. And I'm going, and I think I agree with Councilwoman McCullough. I think it says there's some place that was for other expenses, which I'm sure they're using to cover their police department, their sheriff's department, and the other expenses that they've had that were not budgeted because they were capable of covering those with those expenses. So I'm sure, and as far as I'm concerned, their 2.4 that they got for COVID related expenses, they can do whatever they want to with that. I mean, if they do extra drives out for whatever, that's fine because it was for their allotment was for the people, was specifically for the people in the unincorporated area. What I'm talking about is, along the lines of what you said, our citizens pay a county tax every year that is pretty close to equivalent to what they pay in city tax. And you look at all the stuff that they get from the city tax that they pay, and then you look at what the county provides, and then you look at these years with, if they, these big numbers of money that they have in reserves, maybe some of that should have been a reserve for the health district in case something like this happened. So there was a reserve. We plan for hurricanes every year. We keep a reserve for hurricanes every year because that's a possibility that we could be faced with every year. So maybe the health district should have had a reserve from all that money that our citizens have paid in as well.
So could we just request from them that the county, I mean, I would like to give the county the benefit of the doubt that maybe there is a bigger purpose for some of these reserve funds that I just don't know about, that we don't know about, and maybe to give them a chance to explain it. Because I agree, like if there's a substantial amount of money, like Keith said, I mean, the health district is a pretty big portion of what the county commissioners court executes and oversees. And so I'd like to see what their plan is for those reserve funds and why, maybe give them a chance to tell us why they won't be using that funding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Casey. You can't go and try to borrow money from somebody without letting them know what you're spending your money on. Again, I respect Judge Henry, and I respect the Commissioner's Court, but they have not given us enough information to even, on any meaningful basis, consider their request. And something else you said, Tink, it concerns me because I think that in our society there's a notion that this virus knows boundaries. Like this virus says, oh, well, I'm going to wreak havoc in the unincorporated areas of Galveston County, but I'm not going to go in the city of Lamarck and I won't go in the city of Texas City. It's been proven time and time again, no matter what people tell us on the television screens, no matter what they tell us throughout, no matter what they tweet about, it's been proven time and time again. This virus does not know a political party, does not know a race, does not know an economic status. This virus is a killer, and it's killing people regardless of whether you believe it's a hoax or not. So I really think that Judge Henry and the Commissioner's Court need to give us more information concerning what they're spending that other 1.1 on. And also, I believe that because of this pandemic, we have had all sorts of other issues within our city that's requiring our police department to be on a heightened level of response, and that's requiring our fire department to be on a heightened level of response. I thought I talked to you earlier, and you said to me, Tink, that our police officers and our firefighters are riding around the city with extra masks in their presence, so that if they come across any of our citizenry that does not have a mask, that they are able to distribute those masks. That is a COVID-related operation and activity. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm with you, Tink, 100%. If there is any money at the end of the day that's going back to the federal government, then you and I, Lamarck and the county can have a conversation. But outside of that, I think that Judge Henry and the Commissioner's Court need to be a little more transparent about the monies that they are not telling us where they're designating those $1.1 million.
I'd like to thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, everyone. It's a great discussion. I'd like to, when we come to this on the regular agenda, table it until the August 10th meeting, see what information we can find out from the county. Then if we have to table it at the August 10th meeting until the September meeting, until we find out what we're going to have left to give, I think tabling it this evening might be a good plan. And somebody will remind me when we get there, we'll do just that, if it's the will of the council.
I'm in agreement with that.
Thank you.
Okay, ready for the next one? Item 6, I think we're on 6C. Discussion relating to adopting resolution number R-2020-0012, recognizing and supporting police officers and law enforcement professionals. And talking with a few of you over the course of the last month with everything that's happened, meeting with our officers and talking to our officers, virtually meeting with our officers and talking to our officers, talking with command staff at the police station, talking to the union and all them. And I talked to Mayor Pro Tem about this, and we thought putting a resolution forward showing that we have that the city council, mayor, city council, and the administration supports our police officers was important. Right now, I'm going to try to do this, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not, but I'm going to try to share a couple of proposed changes. Let me see here if I can figure out how to get to it. This one's different because I have multiple access windows.
Do you see the icon that says share screen, Tink?
Yeah, but it's not letting me share a file because it's on the iPad.
Oh.
Okay, hold on one second.
You want to email it to me, I can share it real quick.
Okay, Kyle, I just sent it to you. We'll see how real quick our server is. There was we had a couple of conversations today about a couple of items, additional items or change to one item. So while he's finding that, if you will look at the second page of the resolution, where we have the next to last whereas, it says, whereas recent experience has shown that crime will begin to rise as officers become less willing to initiate contact with the public due to lack of community and official support. Some concern in that it appears like that's a local issue, that we're having having our officers who are afraid to or not willing to initiate contact, which is not true. So we talked about adding the word where it says recent experience nationally, because we've heard about this happening at the national level, has shown that crime and change will to may begin to rise as officers become less willing to initiate contacts with the public due to lack of community and official support. And then adding in another one above the last one that says, whereas the mayor, city council, city administration, and the Lamarque Police Department are resolved to hold our officers accountable to the highest standards of policing and are committed to continuing dialogue with our citizens related to local issues. So I would propose that we add those two changes into it, and then be willing to answer any questions that you guys have related to it.
I really don't have any questions. I think Mayor Pro Tem originally suggested this. So when we come to this on the regular agenda, Mayor Pro Tem, if you want to submit that for the record, it's not necessary that you read it, but we'll make those changes. And if everybody's comfortable, we'll submit it for the record.
Yes, sir, I agree. Thank you.
Hey, I'm sorry if you, I don't mean to interrupt, but my computer just went on a complete robotic freak out. And so I had to switch computers. So I'm sorry if I missed any pertinent part of that conversation.
The only thing we talked about on there, Councilwoman, was making the changes to the adding nationally and made to the one section that you suggested, and then adding in that next paragraph down below it. Can you see it?
Love it. Thank you.
Okay, so you're good?
Yes, I am. Sorry. Yes. Chef's kiss means yes. I'm in agreement.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you can go ahead and take that off now, Kyle. Thank you. Item number 5D or 6D, discussion related to self-quarantine or homebound assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is Councilman Mitchell. You want to talk about this one, Councilman?
Yes, sir. At the end of the day, when we all think about this, none of us on this call can change the testing guidelines, can change the actual test and what they're testing for. We can't force the FDA to make any different changes to treatment plans or treatment plans for people. We can't, there's very little we can do. We've made mask ordinance, we can put fines, but when it comes down to it, we can provide testing. But when people test positive and they have to self-quarantine, it becomes a burden to them and it adds fear. We have a significant number of our population who are by themselves or either a husband and wife, and they may or may not have kids around to help. This is something that I'm looking at. What can we do to lessen the impact of this? We all talk about, some of us say, well, this virus is a killer. It's this and that. Yes, it's bad. And no matter what it is, but it creates fear in people. Some people don't have it, but a lot do. And when we have to self-quarantine, how do they get their groceries? How do they get their medicines delivered? If they were getting food assistance, how do they even get out to go pick that up? There is an app on the Nextdoor, but then again, so many people do not have access to internet or this. But the app on Nextdoor, on the help, you can volunteer yourself and what you can do to your neighbors and those neighborhoods that you are part of on that app in order to do this. But I think something like this, I'd like to see if we can put together a coordinated effort through some of our churches. And I spoke with KHA Radio. They would be love to have this on there, but even speak with Henry and Kaiser. Let's see if we can get in the questionnaire when somebody goes to test, can we add a question where they can opt in for assistance if they need it? And then we can reach out, we can build, we can have Colleen, send this out and solicit volunteers. We can solicit it on Nextdoor. We can solicit it on Facebook, and we can build our network of volunteers to help and at least call. is there something that we can actually do to lessen this impact on our residents? And I'm not talking about the county. I want to look at Lamarck first.
So, I mean, as a city, I don't see anything wrong with us being the spearhead of something that tries to help our I mean, people that become shut in. I mean, I'm sure there's been some people that have really struggled with this, and this may very well be an issue where, I mean, I live alone and I get it, and I don't have any food in the house. I'm supposed to be on self-quarantine, and I don't have any food in the house. I don't have my medication. I don't have any way to get it. And I have to have the medication. I have to have something to eat. So I leave and go do it. And maybe this could be something that I get. I mean, I could see this being a real impact on community spread if they don't have another mechanism for somebody to reach out to get some help, somebody to go, they can pay over the phone for their medication. Maybe somebody will pick up their medication for them, drop it off at their house, or they can pay over the phone for their groceries and somebody go pick it up and drop it off. I think there are a couple of grocery services now that are doing deliveries, but there's a lot of other things that aren't doing deliveries yet. Yeah. So I mean, I would think that would probably be a pretty worthy thing to try to take on if that's what we want to do.
Well, Tink, I think it'd have to start with a conference call between, and I'd like to get Henry on there and Kaiser, and then yourself and Colleen and maybe KHA radio, and get Kurt on there, and let's kick a few things around, get some input, and see what some suggestions are, what could work. But other than that, if all we're going to do is we can make our laws, but we're not, I want to see us do something to actually help the people and coordinate an effort that can help them.
Any other questions or comments on that item?
Mr. Jackson, Mayor and Council, could I speak to that just a moment?
Sure you can.
So I am aware of some other cities. They're much smaller than Lamarck, but I am aware of one that does this style of thing. One of the options that they used that I think helps with a lot of the potential legal pitfalls with something like this is they have basically, like Mr. Mitchell was talking about, they use an app or an internet logon where you just add yourself to a list. The thing that I like about what they're doing that might work for you guys is they are not tying it to COVID. It's specific to if you are elderly or you live alone or there's someone who might need to be connected to a volunteer network, you can opt in, and then it's just your name and contact information. And so there's no HIPAA information or anything like that that could be shared. And then the volunteers basically kind of go down the list and call the people and just check in and see if they're doing okay. Do they need anything, and try to connect them with that kind of help.
Yeah, I could see it being anybody opting into it, maybe being assigned two different people, something like that,
Just a little side note on that. Colleen just sent me a message and said, we already register people for cleanups. We have the mechanism on our website to register people. We register them for cleanups. We registered kids for the Kid Fish via our website, so it wouldn't be that hard to do it.
Yeah.
The only pitfall I see, the only thing I would see, and of course if they opt into it at the health district, that's fine. They would have to opt into that at the health district because the health district can't notify us that we've got somebody that's positive and tell us we need to reach out to them. They would either have to opt into being reached out to if they test positive, or now we do have our police department and fire departments are notified. They have to be of any type, any public health issue that's going to affect them or could affect them when they're providing their service. They get a list of addresses each day that tells them where somebody who's tested positive is at. And we may be able to utilize an off-duty officer on overtime to do this too. Off-duty firefighter maybe to go around and talk to people if we're not, there's a lot of things we can look at. But it's just we're gonna have to dig into it and figure it out.
Yeah, if I could interject there, there are many people like my wife and I that are self-quarantining that haven't tested positive, but they don't want to test positive. So there's a big need that would have nothing to do with HIPAA of people that would opt in just because they don't want to be out in public and they may be older or have underlying health conditions. And so I think this is a great idea. It's probably going to take a lot of planning, but if Colleen already has that type of process for the database, I see no reason why we can't do this to help people, whether or not they've tested positive or not.
I think it would be, I completely agree. I agree with you, Mayor, and I agree with you, Robert. I think this is a really very worthy effort, but it does sound like it will be a lot of effort and it will require the energies of a lot of different people. And I'm wondering if, I certainly don't want Colleen to feel like she put in her 2 cents and now we're like, great.
No.
Run it. Which I know that's not what you're saying, Mayor, but can we, to Robert's point, I think a conversation with the county and maybe seeing, has there already been some steps made towards getting something like this going for elsewhere in the county? And could we all just mind meld and get something together? And certainly I can think of so many local Marque citizens who, if we put out a call for volunteering, a certain amount of time every month to just be a participant in this and help form it, then I think a lot of people would be willing to be a part of it. So I think there should definitely be a conversation with the county about it.
Yeah, we're not going to give you any money, but we have a great idea how to use your resources to help.
Well,
I like it.
Exactly.
I like it. But I think there's, the other thing.
they want money. They want money. They might come to the table and help.
They might. That's a good point. The other thing with this too, I don't remember how long ago it's been, and maybe Councilwoman McAuliffe will remember exactly how long it's been since we did this. Or Chief, she had Councilwoman McAuliffe had contacted me at the earlier parts of the pandemic about making sure that we were, what we were doing for people who were food insecure during the pandemic. And we scheduled a couple extra food trucks to come into the Marque, and the police officers got some food donated from, I don't remember where it was donated from, but they got some boxes. It was a week's worth of food in a box, and they were keeping them in their cars. And anytime we got a name with anybody that we thought might need some help, they were going and checking on them if they needed it. They were passing those boxes. They were giving them those boxes. One of the things I think we saw was those food trucks during that time. It appeared that those food trucks, or when they were the food donation trucks, when they were showing up, the numbers were actually kind of down. And I kind of wonder now if maybe the reason the numbers weren't down is because people were afraid to go to those distribution trucks as well too. So that might be another group we can work with, because some of those people may have been utilizing those food distribution trucks. So the churches that have been doing the food distributions, that might be another way to find some of these people that may be shut in as well. Yeah, we can sure start trying to
Oh, excuse me.
we can sure start trying to work on it.
God.
That's you.
If my grandson was around, I could tell you what he'd be saying.
Okay, anything else on item 6D? We'll make some phone calls and we'll see if we can get something rolling with that. Item 6C, discussion relating to adopting ordinance numbers O-2020-0010 pursuant to Texas Government Code Chapter 418 related to control measures to limit the spread of COVID-19 virus, including requiring commercial entities providing goods or services directly to the public to develop a health and safety policy mandating the wearing of face masks in their facility, requiring masks in accordance with Governor's Order GA-29, and making other provisions related to the subject. I'm going to turn this one over to Dara.
Thank you. So as council is probably aware, the mayor passed his mask order on July 2nd that morning, because we were seeing really big increases in cases. And this followed several other cities in the area and eventually some counties. 4 hours after that, the governor issued his order. There was a mask order. And so that's impacted a little bit what the mayor did. The mayor, acting under his emergency authority, his order expires unless council basically extends it. So what you have before you is an ordinance that is effectively what the mayor's order said, adjusted for the changes that happened in between. As far as the real teeth, what you're mandating is just that businesses have a health and safety policy. That is kind of the only leeway that was left open to you by the governor. Other than that, you do what you've always done since the pandemic started, which is you've got limits on City Hall. You are encouraging, strongly encouraging citizens to wear masks and comply with the governor's order, GA 29. And everything in this ordinance is relating back to the governor's order so that we are consistent with that.
So, Dara, are we incapable legally of changing the language from strongly recommends or strongly encourages the masks to requiring it?
In my opinion, you could change the language, but it wouldn't have a different legal impact than strongly recommends. Right now, the big legal issue that I know many other cities are dealing with as well is that the language in the governor's order on detention does not allow you to even temporarily detain someone to write them a citation for not wearing a mask. It's possible that that was inadvertent. We all know these sometimes get written very quickly. So maybe the governor's order will change. If it does, we can modify this ordinance. The mayor can actually do an emergency order. It'll last for 7 days and then council can extend it. But at this point, the legal framework, the consensus is that no, there's no way to really enforce that individual mask order.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Casey. I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
So if I understood that correctly, Dara, then we could say we require masks, but we couldn't do anything to back it up.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd be curious to know what the rest of the council thinks, because I mean, even if we couldn't back it up, I think there could be a strong message there from the city if we were to say, like, no, just like the executive order says, we're requiring masks in our city because this is real and it is your imperative to take care of those around you by wearing a mask. And we don't strongly encourage it. We're saying wear a mask.
If I could a little bit, Councilwoman McCullough, so we tried to do that. I tried to kind of incorporate both sides of the argument, so to speak, into this. So it does say that face coverings are required as provided in Governor's Order GA 29. There are a lot of exceptions in the Governor's Order,
right?
But we're basically citing back to that. And then we're saying further, citizens 10 years or older are strongly encouraged to wear a face covering. And this is regardless of what those exceptions are in the governor's order. So even if you're not legally required under the governor's order to wear a mask, we're encouraging you to just wear one, period. And then we're talking about that the CDC advises face coverings for people who are 2 years or older. So, you know, really, you should wear a mask all the time, anytime you can, not because of fear of citation, but because it's something that we as a city are asking you to do.
I wanted to, first I wanted to thank Mayor Hocking for his courage in issuing the mask order before Governor Abbott issued the mask order. Mayor, I understand and I know that there are a lot of folks that were opposed to your decision. But I want you to know that there are those of us out here that respect you as mayor and respect that you are, and you have been the leader. You and Tink Jackson have been the leaders for this city as it relates to our COVID response. And I want to thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank you, Tink, because this entire time, both of you have been leading us in this COVID crisis. And I have my faith in both of you guys to continue to lead us through. So everybody's not going to pat you on the back, Mayor, but I'm patting you on the back this time. I think that was an excellent stance that took a lot of courage from you. But Dara, my question is for you and perhaps for Tink. I believe Section 6 says that that our peace officers are required to enforce this ordinance. And so if there is no citation or there's no penalty associated with it, how are we going to enforce it? Is that simply pulling folks over, reminding them to wear a mask, offering them a mask? What does that look like for our peace officers so that our community might know what they should expect?
So actually the language in section 6 says accepting section 2, which is the face coverings, and subject to the limitations contained in the governor's executive order. So hopefully that adjusts as the legal interpretations to that order adjust. But at this point, I would say that the way that looks in practice, we're mostly putting the onus on our businesses to try and remind people. If a firefighter or a peace officer had an interaction with an individual that was not wearing a mask, they could ask them to wear a mask. They could remind them of the mask order, but they're not actually required to enforce it. They're authorized to enforce it. So I know that's a lot of kind of nitpicky legal language there, but we're basically just doing our best to try to match up with what the governor's orders say now and what our legal authority is, and then adapt to changes if they happen.
I totally agree with that. The governor extended his emergency declaration on Friday. That'll run until our next meeting, which is August the 10th. He does it on the 10th of each month because that's when he first signed it, was on the 10th. I find that the people who are rebelling against wearing a mask do it on a constitutional basis. I find that the people in Lamarck, the ones I see each and every day, I don't get out of the car, but I wave. They're wearing masks. I think people who are taking this seriously are wearing masks. People who don't think it's constitution based are not wearing masks. And so no matter what we do, there's going to be those that like it and those that don't. I would be more comfortable for the council to vote to reissue the order that I already signed without changing the language to required, because the governor in another 2 or 3 days, if you've been watching the news and when you're self-quarantined, you're on the internet a bunch, he may shut the whole thing down again. And I'm not sure the other day if I was 4 hours early or he was 4 hours late, but it had to be done. And I'm willing to sign that same order, but I'd like for it, when we get to that point, to be a unanimous vote of our council, because we should all be involved. Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm certainly not going to vote against this just because I'm curious about whether we could change it to requires or not. For me, I just wanted to know what our legal parameters were and what those ramifications might be, because
Mayor, the only thing that I've heard from the businesses that I've been around, and it's all been positive. I see them, they've all made their mask ordinance, and they're following the guidelines. And I think it's working, but I hear a lot of negative feedback about the $1,000 fine on businesses themselves. And I'd really like to see, in good faith, because they are following everything, and the businesses themselves do not want to go under. They're going to follow these mask orders because they want to keep their businesses going. I'd like to see that reduced to something like $250. It just came out real negative about that one stickler.
I'd ask that Dara respond to that, because that's not our law. That is another law. Can you respond to that, Dara?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And if you don't mind, I'll respond to what you had said earlier as well. So first, on the fine, that's actually set under Chapter 418 of the Texas Government Code. So to the extent that this is related to a local disaster declaration, the fee is $1,000 and it's set by statute. I know the governor's order lowered the fees, but as we've just discussed, it also made it not possible to actually enforce even under the lower fees. So you can't really follow that example. But I will note, for the public as well, just because a fee is $1,000 doesn't mean that that's what is actually imposed in municipal court. And I would also point out that the city, if we were to pass this under a different statutory framework, we could actually impose a $2,000 fine. And we chose not to do that. We stuck with the lower one. And so when you actually get to municipal court, it's going to be up to the judge's discretion, but the maximum it could be is $1,000. I would be pretty surprised if there was a fine imposed that was that high, especially for first offense. And I think most people who go through that situation are aware of that. Most tickets are not the maximum on your first offense.
So you're saying that it cannot be lowered by statute?
That would be my interpretation. The statute sets the fee at $1,000. Now, if you want to lower it to $500, I don't have a problem with that. I just want to point out that potentially you've still got a statutory requirement of $1,000, so it's still possible the fee could end up that high.
Well, we set other fines and fees, for other laws and things that can be lower. So I don't follow that.
It's set in state law. I mean, under the code that the order is being written under, that dollar amount's established by the legislature. We can't change that. We could put $250 in here, but then if somebody was cited and went to court, the judge is still going to go with what the law says, which is $1,000 up to $2,000. Let me make a couple more comments on this. I think are probably important in this conversation. One, when the mayor signed his order, I had code enforcement deliver those orders to our businesses. They came in on a Saturday and worked all day on a Saturday and then finished delivering them on the following Monday. 99.9% of our businesses were very congenial about it. They knew it was coming. They were happy about it. Now, not only did they deliver the order, they gave them masks when they walked in the door. If they didn't have masks for them and their employees, they gave them masks for them and their employees. We've had a couple of businesses since then that I know have come back and they had ordered some. They weren't able to get them, so we gave them a few more so they had enough to get through. The businesses that I've been in here in the Marque, some of our businesses are taking this so seriously. We have drive-in restaurants, drive-in fast food places here in the Marque that when you pull up in the drive-through, if you don't have a mask on, they won't serve. Even though you're not inside the building with their staff, they know that distance can be less than 6 feet. If you pull up right beside the window, and if you don't have a mask and they pull up, they won't even open the window. They won't even serve you. I mean, so I think our businesses are taking this very, very seriously, and I don't think the enforcement part is really going to become an issue here. And to what we've done, the code enforcement police officers, all of them, what we've done in this, and we've tried to be really good with this from the start. Is we're trying to enforce by educating. If we see somebody that's not wearing a mask for a business doesn't have, we're going to talk to them and try to get them to do it. Now, I guess at some point, if we had a business that just absolutely said, forget you, we're never going to do this, whatever, we may end up in an enforcement type action at that point. But I really don't see that happening here. I mean, they're seeing the numbers. When the numbers got up in the 250, 300 range, everybody finally started, peers paying attention. And I think our businesses are doing really good. So whether it's 1,000 or 250, when it goes, if somebody was cited, if it went to court, the court is going to go to Chapter 417, which says $1,000 to $2,000. So it doesn't matter what we have in this. If it's lower, it's almost like we're creating a false pretense with our citizens that we're not going to charge them more than that, when it wouldn't be our decision what they finally got charged at the end of it anyway. It's going to be the judge's decision. But we're really focused on enforcement by education and not enforcement by because we know, $1,000 to these businesses right now, to some of them, that could be enough to make them or break them right now. In a single week, that $1,000 may be the difference between payroll and not making payroll. So we're not, we don't want to have to enforce against them. We want to work with them and get them to follow it, and they're being really good about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tank.
First of all, yay for the place that requires the mask, the fast food place. Would you like to mention?
Jack in the Box, the new Jack in the Box at the
There you
new,
go. The ones with the tacos with the orange grease at the bottom.
that's the
yeah.
one.
I think it's important to remember that the city of Marque has been in the business of giving almost $1 million. I think it 973 at last count. We're not in the business of taking money. We're in the business of giving our businesses money. I think it needs to have teeth in case there was some sort of mass rebellion of businesses. I just don't see that happening in Lamarck. Our businesses are thankful for what the city has done for them. So I'm happy with the unanimous vote of council later on, and I'm not mandating that. Obviously, I can't, but I'd like to have the support and sign the same order that I signed before, as Dira has outlined. And we go forward and we run that concurrent with Dira, if it's okay with the governor's declaration. If he renews on the 10th next month, at our meeting, we'll renew. And we'll go forward month by month until hopefully there's a vaccine or this thing picks up and goes out in the Gulf. I don't know, but we're in a very serious situation, and we need to jump on this.
That's correct, Mayor. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah. I wanted to ask Chief Jackson a question, but my experience, I wanted to tell Tink, my experience in visiting with business owners is similar to yours. They are thankful, they're grateful, they want to do their part to move this forward. And I want to caution us. One of the things that's happening on a federal level is mixed messaging. One side or one person says one thing, and then another side or another person says something else, and it's confusing all of our states and all of our local entities. It's important that we clarify, and I'm glad that you did, Tink and Dira, that this is state law. It's the $1,000 in question is a state law. That's something that they need to understand, and so we need to be careful so that we don't mix the messaging and cause them to have frustration and resentment toward us when this is in fact something that's coming from the state level. But I did want to ask Chief Jackson, just really quickly, because I want to get this clear. How are you and your officers executing Section 6? How are you guys enforcing this?
The last thing that we want to do is write somebody a citation for not wearing a mask. What we're doing is we're asking folks, please put your masks on. Don't make us get to that point. And for the most part, I really haven't seen many people out there who aren't wearing masks. So we haven't written any tickets yet. Not going to say we won't get to a point where we won't have to. But as far as what we're doing is we're asking for voluntary compliance at this point. This is, we want people to wear their masks. We don't want to write them a ticket. We do not want to fine them. But we got I did get Rosemary Bell or the court clerk to add a charge into the system and in the ticket writers that in the event we need to, we can. But what we're doing is just asking people, please wear your masks when you're out in a public place.
Okay, gotcha. I just wanted the people to know that that's where you are right now, so that they'll know what to expect.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is write somebody a ticket.
Gotcha.
I just want everybody to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on 6E? Item number 6F. Discussion possible action regarding adoption of ordinance number O-2020-0011, a request for abandonment of an unimproved public right-of-way in the Ambrose subdivision near FM 1765 and Delaney Road. I'll turn this one over to Dara.
So this was the Ambrose Plan Development District, which council approved at the last meeting, and you've got the second reading on the ordinance tonight. You also approved the general plan. There is a small basically like a legal hurdle that we just have to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So their general plan called for abandonment of an unimproved right-of-way that crosses the property currently, and it's been replaced in their general plan by a right-of-way a little farther north of that that cuts through the neighborhood and provides connection. So the circulation plan was fine. Our issue with them, they're asking for abandonment so they can go ahead and close on the property and the development can actually start building. But as a city, we're going to protect ourselves and we won't release the right-of-way until they can plat the new right-of-way. So there's been an issue with timing because they can't plat right now until they close on the property. So what we have in front of you is a typical abandonment ordinance, but it's got some modified language that allows for either they can pay the fair market value of that right-of-way, or they can plat the new right-of-way in accordance with their general plan. So the abandonment would not really be effective until they do one of those two things. And the developer's attorney has already agreed to this language as well. So we think this solves kind of the legal issue where they still had that unimproved right-of-way sitting out there.
Okay, any questions or comments on that one? So we're kind of stuck on moving that development forward until we have some resolution with this issue. Any questions or comments? If not, Mayor, that's it for the workshop.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the City of Lamarck regular City Council meeting, Monday, July 13th, 2020. We're obviously after our workshop. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, if you'll, just for the record, please call the roll again.
Are you muted, Robin?
Thank you. Yes, I was. But I see you're here, Belle. Thank you. Councilmember District B. Lane.
Present.
Councilmember District C. Mixtitch.
Present.
Councilwoman D. McCollum.
Present.
Hey, thank you. Everybody's here and Mayor's here.
I didn't hear you call A, but I know he's here. Item 3, the minutes, A, B, C, and D, regular meeting minutes of June 8th, 2020, workshop minutes of June 8th, 2020, special meeting minutes of June 9th, 2020, special meeting minutes of May 5th, 2020. Same protocol, state your name when you make your motion and second. And I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Bell, so moved.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Raise your hand. Yes, thank you. Any
Whatever.
opposed? Show the motion passes. Item 4 is public hearing. Madam Clerk, will you call the time, please?
7:35.
Thank you. At 7:35, we will adjourn the regular meeting and open the public hearing. Item A, conduct a public hearing to hear public input to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0005, changing the zoning district for Ambrose, approximately 81 acres located near the intersection of Texas Avenue, FM 1765, and Delaney Road from R1 Single Family Residential to Ambrose Planned Development District, Ambrose PDD, establishing zoning regulations for the Ambrose PDD and amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to reflect this PDD. Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none. Item B, conduct a public hearing to hear public input to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0006, changing the zoning district for 5.9114 acres located near the intersection of FM 2004 and Mitchell Lane, Galveston County Tax Property ID number 131351 from R1 Single Family Residential to C1 General Commercial. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none. Item C, conduct a public hearing to hear public input to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0007, changing the zoning district for trails at Woodhaven Lakes, approximately 82 acres, located near the intersection of Texas Avenue, FM 1765, and Delaney Road from R1 Single Family Residential to trails at Woodhaven Lakes Planned Development District, trails at Woodhaven PDD, establishing zoning regulations for trails at Woodhaven PDD, and amending the comprehensive plan and zoning map to reflect this PDD. Anyone wishing to speak? Item D, conduct a public hearing to hear public input to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0008, abandoning that portion of alleyway between 309 Stewart Street and 311 Stewart Street, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute quitclaim deeds conveying the abandoned alleyway to the adjacent property owners. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Madam Clerk, if you'll call the time.
7:38.
7:38, we'll adjourn the public hearing and reopen the regular meeting. Item 5, old business. Consider recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0005 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, real quick, Mayor, this is Dara, if you don't mind. On this item, if I could just point out to the council and to the public, at the last council meeting, the ordinance was adopted subject to a modification in the language in section 4 regarding the front yard setbacks. I noticed in the packet that the older version of the ordinance was put in there by mistake. So the correct version will be the one signed by the mayor, but if you can just make the motion subject to the change approved by council at the last meeting, which was to substitute the language in section 4 front yard to say any lot fronting on a right-of-way less than 60 feet in width shall have a front yard setback of 25 feet. All other lots shall meet the requirements for an R1 single-family residential zoning district. Example, 20-foot front yard setback, and each street corner lot shall have the required front yard on at least one side fronting a street.
Thank you, ma'am. So I'll entertain a motion with the changes outlined by Dara.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem. I make a motion that we approve this ordinance with the changes that have just been delineated by our interim city attorney.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, sir. There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Show any opposed. Show the motion passes. Item B, consider a recommendation to adopt, and thank you, Dara. Consider a recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-006 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem. I move approval. I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Mitch Titch seconds. And any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item C, consider recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0007 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mitch Titch. Is there a second?
Yes, second. Mayor Pro Tem.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item D, consider recommendation to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0008 as delineated in the public hearing. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mitch Titch. Is there a second?
Mayor Pro Tem second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item 6 is the consent agenda. Is there anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Mayor, I think that, this Mayor Pro Tem, I think that we said that we were going to pull B so that we can make sure we approve it according and consistent with the interim city attorney's approval, provided that there is an instance that we have the opportunity for mail-in voting because of this pandemic.
That's correct.
That's correct. So we'll pull B. Any others? I'll entertain a motion on voting on the consent agenda.
So move.
Mayor Pro Tem second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And are there any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item 7, under new business, discussion possible action regarding to adopt.
Mayor, you got to go back to B.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Consider recommendation relating to enter into a contract with the Galveston County Clerk and Galveston County Election Officer for the general election to be held on November 3rd, 2020, and possible runoff election on December 15th, 2020. How would you wish to proceed?
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve this contract with the caveat or the amendment that is subject to the interim city attorney's approval, provided that there may be a possibility that we can have more mail-in voting as it relates to this COVID-19 crisis.
Yes, sir. And that's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
I second. Councilwoman McAuliffe.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed? We have
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order. I'd like to get Dira's interpretation on whether or not we can abstain for any reason.
So I haven't looked at your charter for that particular issue. An abstention is basically a no vote. So legally, it doesn't matter whether someone abstains or votes no.
That I appreciate that, Dira. I'd like the record to reflect that.
Thank you.
Casey, I didn't get Casey's vote.
She's a yes, I believe, but go ahead, Casey.
Okay.
Aye. Sorry, I'm having connectivity issues.
No problem. Show the motion passes 4-1. Under new business, discussion possible action under item 7A to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-009, amending Article 3 speed regulations of Marque Code of Ordinances, Section 6288, as discussed in the workshop. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Mayor Pro Tem second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item B, discussion, possible action relating to the CARES Act interlocal agreement request by the city of Galveston. I'll entertain a motion to table this.
Table. Motion to table.
Motion to table. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. No discussion on the table. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Show the motion passes. Item C, discussion possible action relating to adopt resolution number R-2020-0012, recognizing and supporting police officers and law enforcement professionals as amended this evening in the screenshot that we were shown. And so, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll give you the honor of making this motion since this was your suggestion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution supporting our police officers and our law enforcement and reaffirming that we're holding them to the highest standard of policing in our community. We support them and we're encouraging them to continue on doing those tremendous acts of service that they've been doing.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Show the motion passes. Item D, discussion possible action relating to self-quarantine or homebound assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think that we require any action on this, do we, Mr. Jackson?
No, we'll make some phone calls and do some digging and see if we can put some ideas together.
Great. Item E, discussion possible action relating to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0010, an ordinance pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 418, related to control measures to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, so move.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Councilwoman McAuliffe, I second.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll on this one for me, please?
Sure. Mayor Pro Tem Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember District B Lane,
Aye.
Councilmember District C Mitch Titch,
Aye.
Councilwoman District D McAuliffe.
Aye.
And
Mayor.
the mayor is an aye as well. Thank you, council. Show the motion passes. Item F, discussion possible action relating to adopt ordinance number 0-2020-0011, a request for abandonment of the unimproved public right-of-way in the Ambrose subdivision near 1765 and Delaney Road. This is the first reading. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Councilwoman McAuliffe, I second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Show the motion passes. Number 8A, discussion possible action relating to appointments and or reappointments to fill various positions in the boards and commissions. Anyone have any appointments or reappointments this evening?
Mayor, I would like to appoint Mrs. Tamara Williams to a second term to the Parks Board Commission.
Thank you. We have a reappointment of Tamara Williams to the Parks Board. Are there any others?
Mayor, Dara wanted to explain the importance of trying to get some alternates on the BOA. That is a really, yes. Go ahead,
Yes,
Dara.
ma'am. Go right ahead.
So if I could speak to this just a minute. So this board, the Board of Adjustments, is mandated by statute. It is something that we have to have. And that board, they don't meet all the time, but when they do meet, they have pretty difficult decisions to make. And it does take some legal education. They do have a legal standard that they employ on a regular basis, and it's considered a quasi-judicial hearing in a lot of instances. So we recently had a meeting where, more due to probably pandemic conditions and everyone being stretched a little thin, we were unable to make a quorum, even though we had all our members of the public there on a virtual meeting. And that was pretty rough. So even after sitting for 45 minutes, we still could not get a quorum together of that board, and we had to reschedule that meeting. And we had some public that was really waiting with bated breath for those decisions. So even in normal times, a Board of Adjustment, because they're mandated by statute and don't meet all the time, can be difficult to get a quorum. And we just noticed that this board does not have any alternates right now. It takes all of them, to really meet. So we can't have hardly any absences. And I know there's, various personal issues for these members that can interfere. On top of that, the meeting is in the middle of the workday, so they're really sacrificing to be on this board. That doesn't mean that the meeting has to stay at that time. If the consensus of the members is that they want a different time, evening, whatever, we will certainly adjust and work with them as long as Mr. Jackson and the staff are available. But I just wanted to reiterate that to council. This is a statutorily required board, and that they really could use some alternates. If you have people that you can appoint, and as far as we can find, there's no statutory limit on the number of people who can be appointed to the Board of Adjustment. So something I had suggested is that at some point we may need to fill in members of, say, the Planning and Zoning Commission or some of the other development related boards. So even if you end up with a lot of alternates on the Board of Adjustments, they'll learn things that can then be used to apply to other boards later on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is this something that can wait until the 10th unless someone has one now? I haven't had an opportunity to ask anyone, so I'm certainly not going to make an appointment, but your point is well taken. And is this something we can do on August the 10th?
Absolutely. Whenever the council has people, if you have one now, that would be great. And if not, as soon as possible is soon enough.
Yeah.
Robin, can you contact us about whose alternates, whose the appointments belong to?
It's all in the backup, but I can also tell you that in the backup too, there are 2 applications that 2 separate people are asking to be on the Board of Adjustment.
Okay. Okay.
Who are those people?
We have a Crystal Cooper and Daniel Brown, and let me see who's Board of Adjustments appointees. What's the matter?
One of the appointments is mine. It's Miss Helen Key, and I haven't had any communication with Miss Helen Key ever since I've been on commission or I've been on council. And Dara, your point is heard loud and clear. I'll reach out to her right away and see what's the status and take a look at these other applications. Okay. Thank you so much for that input.
Mayor, one of them is yours too.
I'll appoint Daniel Brown this evening.
Thank you.
Mayor, Dara, I've heard some feedback that on the Board of Adjustments, there's a couple of the sitting members that have missed quite a number of those meetings. Would it be appropriate for the particular council person that appointed them, along with yourself, to maybe talk with them to see if they can, if they're not going to be able to do it, maybe they need to step down?
I think that that's certainly reasonable, and I'm happy to do that. I will say, working with boards of adjustment in a lot of other cities, it's kind of an unusual board because they don't meet on a regular basis. So, one suggestion that I had made is perhaps doubling the number of appointments so that everyone appoints 2 people instead of just the 1, just so that we can have those extra alternates on that board, because your absences in that instance, since we don't know when they're going to have to meet, they also have statutory limits where they have to meet within a certain number of days. So we could really call on them any time, and it's maybe not reasonable to expect them to be available at our beck and call for that.
Yeah. And I think we might ought to consider changing their meeting time. I think theirs is at 2. Is it 2 o'clock?
It is 2.
Yeah.
And of course, that board, I mean, if the board, if the full board told us that the 5 o'clock meeting or a 6 o'clock meeting would be better, we would have already changed it. That's historically the time they met, and none of them have talked to us about requesting a change in the time that I know of. So I think that's.
Tink, do you have the authority to do that?
To change the time? They could do it in their board.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, Mayor, I think it was prudent of you to act swiftly and appoint Daniel Brown, but I do know that Daniel Brown is a person I had spoken to because he had asked about appointments to commissions. I know his first interest is building and standards, and that application was submitted several months ago, and so things might have changed. It might be worth checking in with him to see where he's at before telling him he's on Board of Adjustment.
Then I'll withdraw, although Board of Adjustments is probably our most important board, since that's the last place you go before going to court.
Correct.
Right. And I mean, I think
But
for that reason.
I will ask him. The only reason I jumped and appointed him because I know who he is, and I know who his wife is even more so because she's in.
Well, it's Alana. It's wonderful, Alana.
She's into our garden, and we're into her butterflies, and so yeah, we know that family. But yeah, I can do that on August the 10th. I'll be happy. Robin, would you reach out to him on my behalf?
Sure. Just
Oh.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
So the applications that we have in the packet, we have an application from Daniel for January 13th of this year, and it was for building standards.
Right. It says his second preference is Board of Adjustments.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's number 2.
Okay.
That's the only reason I said that is because I know because of his work experience, he was really interested in building standards, and I just thought maybe he'd want to heads up.
Yeah.
The other question, are there any openings in building standards anytime in the near future?
I think there's 2 currently.
Currently? Okay.
Who do they belong to?
There's actually 3. Mayor,
3.
you Trina Phillips is still on there, and that's your appointment or reappointment or whatever. Billy Jefferson is on there now, and then Maggie Manuel for also A as an alternate.
Yeah, their terms are due up at the end of 20, yes?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're not currently open?
All those are good through the end of the year.
Yes.
Gotcha.
We'll deal with that before the year's out. Thank you, Robin, for pointing that out. Did we vote on Tamara Williams on Parks?
Not yet.
Then I'll go ahead and call for that vote now. We've had a nomination. Is there a second on Tamara?
Second.
Second. There's a second. And so we'll go ahead and call for that vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Show the appointment passes. And I would encourage all of council to be thinking about Board of Adjustment appointments for our August 10th meeting. It's extremely important. Moving on to item 9, requests and announcements. Anyone?
I have a request or a question for Tink. Tink, when will we be able to see that salary survey that you've been working on? I know COVID kind of put you back quite a bit, that you were planning the spring, but I know that all sorts of things are going on. But just as a reference.
It's very close to being done. We're actually having another meeting tomorrow morning. As soon as we have the morning directors meeting, I'm having a meeting with Susie and a couple other staff members. I'm hoping we have it finalized tomorrow. Now, what we're going to be able to incorporate in the budget and what we're not, depending on everything else, we'll have to figure that out. But we're hoping to have it done. It'll be done before you guys get your draft budget.
Good deal. Thank you, Tink.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Hearing nothing else, I'd just like to say it's great interacting with all of you guys and staff and council tonight. Man, I feel like I'm really living life in the fast lane. I feel like a Joe Walsh song, just being able to see the council and interact, and it's awesome. So I want you guys to know that I love you and I love all the staff, and you're doing a great job. Marque is working very well in very trying circumstances. And at this point, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I so move that we adjourn.
And is there a second? Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. You're muted, Susie Sutton. You're muted.